Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's APM webinar, Bringing My Whole Self to Project Delivery, with our guest speaker, Nicola Benjamin from Arup. I'm Robert Allen, APM Branches Manager, and I'll be your host today. It's great to see so many people with us today, and I hope you're all keeping well. Please be aware this webinar is being recorded and you're on listen-only mode. That's not to say we don't want your interaction today. In your control panel, you can submit a question. Nicola is happy to answer these at the end. Also, there'll be a poll towards the end, and we're really keen for you to get involved. This session will count towards your CPD and should last for no longer than an hour. I would personally like to thank all the volunteers from the APM SIG and the APM branches for all their efforts and achievements with planning these webinars. So enough from me, over to Nicola. Nicola is a project professional with over 20 years project delivery experience. Achieving her APM chartership earlier this year, Nicola is a specialist in business change, program management and sponsorship. So Nicola, over to you.
Brilliant, thank you so much, and hi everybody. I'm absolutely delighted to be here and welcome you all to today's webinar. I have the pleasure of sharing my career journey with you and in particular how I have tried to bring the whole of myself to what I do. So before we start in full, I'd just like to say thank you to our hosts, the APM, and in particular to Casper Barrington and Rob and his team for really putting in place the arrangements for today. So thank you guys, and they will be on hand should anything start to go wrong, but hopefully it'll be fine. So over the next 45 minutes or so, I have the chance to explore with you how bringing all of who we are can influence our roles as project professionals for the better. And hopefully what I want to do is to really encourage you to look differently at what bringing yourself to your projects can actually do, and how that interaction with the people that you're involved with can really make a difference. Okay. So by way of introduction, I'm Nicola Benjamin, and thank you very much to Casper for that intro. I'm a chartered project manager, and I'm currently an associate consultant with the firm Arup. I've been a PM for over 20 years, and I specialise in infrastructure delivery. And mainly within the rail sector, but I've also had the opportunity of working in a number of other sectors, including health and social care, local and central government, and also some time working in energy. But we will come on to what that looks like a little bit later in today's presentation. So as you can imagine, I have had, I would guess, a very unique perspective across my career. And it's fair to say that in quite a few of the situations I've tended to be a minority in a number of categories. And that in itself has brought some interesting decisions that I've made, and also some challenges, as well as the perspectives that I have in terms of how project management is rolled out. But what I'd like to do is really share and offer you some ways in which I've been able to maintain the sense of who I am, and really embrace that uniqueness, but also the value in the difference that I bring to what I do. So, moving on. Before I really get into the project management aspect, what I really wanted to do was really describe to you who I am. And it's really important because actually that's really the premise for today. So first of all, I'm a parent. I'm sure that many others of you will recognise that actually looking back at the lion's share of my time has actually been, looking after and being hopefully a really good mum. It's probably the most important role that I have undertaken. It's also a role that I have absolutely adored. In terms of some of my background, I come from a working class background. I went to a really great comprehensive school, and I will say that I have been incredibly fortunate in that I have had great support from my parents and my family, but also some great teachers and role models. And really, I've had the opportunity to find a career that I can be absolutely passionate about. I wanted to move on and describe from the next image is really the values. So my values have really been the core of who I am and how I perform my role as a project manager. I believe hugely in the value of people, and really a lot of what I do is really about how I can deliver on behalf of people and society, and really to make things fairer and more equitable for everybody across society. And very often, a lot of the roles that I've done, a lot of the projects that I've been involved with, I've been most happy when I've been able to really discharge that passion of mine. And then really the final image really just leads itself to the fact that I really have lots of aspirations to do really good things. And I think it's been really important that throughout my career, I've looked to really push boundaries and push myself actually outside of my comfort zone. And I really do believe that we all have the ability to make an impact in what we do, whether that be small or kind of huge challenges. We all have the opportunity to make a difference. So moving on to some of the projects that I've been involved in. So this slide is really good because as well as presenting some really sexy projects that I've had the opportunity to be involved with, it's also a really good view for my reckoning in terms of how the industry, both the rail industry but also project delivery industry has really changed over the last 20 years or so. And it's interesting. So for those of you that remember, I started out my career for what was called the Strategic Rail Authority, and you may remember that it was responsible for developing the approach that we now have to franchising within the rail industry. But as you can imagine, back then, starting out as a 23-year-old at the very beginning of my project career, not knowing a huge amount about project management or project delivery. That was where I really both found my love of project management, but it was also a period where I was actually starting to look at some of the challenges that would be facing me. And quite interestingly, it was where I really started to grapple with the question as to whether or not you conform to those around you or whether you challenge the status quo. And I will say, it is definitely a path of growth. And I'm sure back then I was doing a lot of conforming. I think at that stage in your career, you tend not to have a lot of other choice. You are not the voice in the room that people turn to. And that is something that definitely develops and grows over your career. But what I will say is that those early days were really an excellent opportunity for me to really learn about project management and the craft of doing project management really well. And it's something that stuck with me throughout my career, and it's been something that I've been able to fall back on. So it doesn't matter what you look like on the outside. I've been able to continuously be able to say that actually I am an incredibly competent, capable and diligent project manager, and that is a great thing to be able to really fall back on throughout your career. So just moving forward, so after I worked at the Strategic Rail Authority, absolutely fell in love with project management. And for me, what was really interesting to find out about was the fact that actually really good, competent project management absolutely makes a difference to successful delivery. And that has been something that I think I've really come to appreciate throughout my career, and actually, that willingness to really use project management as a lever to delivering really great outcomes has been something that has absolutely driven me forward. The last thing that I really want to pick up from this slide was just in terms of really how the industry has changed, right up to where we are now. And the most recent project that I've been involved with is actually some work with the UK government looking at the development of the hydrogen industry to help at how we will go about, meeting our decarbonisation programme goals. And really, as I look at that particular programme, what's really great is, although it's a huge piece of work, for the British government to be doing, and will signify real changes and transformation for the energy industry, it is incredibly interesting to look at how the end user is at the centre of that programme. So one of the things that has really changed throughout my career is the fact that project management has moved from a really good profession that looked at how things were done, but moved right to this day where actually we look at why things are done and the importance of the people at the end of that process. So what does a 20-year project career actually look like? So I took a little bit of time, and what I've tried to do here is pull out some of the highlights, but not only the highlights, some of the really important factors in getting my career to where it is today. And I think, as I alluded to before, like many people, I completely fell into project management. It wasn't something that I had done at university or considered, during career counselling at school. It was something that I got involved in because it was a piece of work that we were looking at, and it seemed like a really good idea that we would put some project parameters around it. But what was really great was, in those days, when I signed out, was working with, individuals that really had a focus on getting things done as well as they could do. And I think the whole piece of putting project management frameworks around that really came as something that I recognised as, really important, because actually project management is not an accident. It's something that, happens as a consequence of really understanding what you need in order to succeed. So I spent a lot of time at the early stage of my career just working out how projects work, and why really good projects work and succeed. So I managed to kind of carve out a little niche doing that, and actually that helped move me to roles within Network Rail, and then really helping them to figure out how to deliver really good projects. Over my career, one of the things that I've done is I've had lots of different roles within projects, and I've pulled out the role of project sponsorship, which I did in 2010, and that was part of the work that I did on the Thameslink programme. And again, it's all project management, but it's a different perspective, and it was and one of the things that I will really say, and I think bears out throughout my career, is that opportunity to have different roles within projects and have different perspectives in terms of how you can support good project delivery. And so moving forward to where we are today, so the last 2 years have really signified the move to
Apologies about this. It looks like Nicola's just paused.
Management career. I moved into oh, can you still hear me?
We can hear you, Nicola.
Yeah.
I wonder,
having worked for sort of over 16 years.
I wonder if I could ask you to turn your camera off.
Sorry, Cass, are you okay?
Yeah, we're all okay. I wonder if you can turn your camera off.
Yeah, I will do that.
Perfect. Thank you.
Brilliant. Is that brilliant? Okay. So the last 2 years have been an interestingly enough, it's been, I would say, a career risk, but it's also been an opportunity to pull me out of my comfort zone. And that is something that I look back throughout my career and actually, has been something that has really helped to move me forward and to broaden my project horizons. Okay. So what I wanted to do was just reflect on some of those career challenges, and some of these have come from, a perspective of being, somewhat different to, what people expected a typical project manager to be. But others, I think, are, completely consistent with the fact that being a project manager just has some challenges attached to it. So firstly, transitioning from a doer to a leader. So looking back at the start of my career, I don't think I ever thought it would go beyond sort of specifications on the page that as a really good project manager, you do really well to deliver within those parameters. As I've moved through my career, it's become abundantly evident that actually that role has very much changed, and it isn't just about delivering to a set of requirements or specifications. It's much more about having influence and taking those decisions and leading teams in the way that they need to be. So, for many, it can be a bit traumatic to move from that. But for others, it's something that is clear an aspiration within your career. So I would just give real encouragement that it happens over time, but it's actually a really interesting place to get to. The challenge of ensuring that you get varied project exposure, and this was something that was probably made most obvious to me when I was actually recently applying for my chartered status with the APM. And recognising actually being a really good project manager means that you have just operated in lots of different project environments, you've done lots of different jobs, and you've been exposed to lots of different project risks, which has encouraged you to really need to delve into your project manager's toolbox. One thing I would say though is certainly early on in my career was getting the opportunities to have that project exposure was something that at times was very frustrating and not necessarily very easy. So there is something in terms of having to create sometimes your own opportunities, but also to recognise that actually even though you may be completely excelling in one particular area within a project, actually if you really want to get good at doing this, then actually you need to pull yourself out and put yourself in different positions and take yourself out of your comfort zone. So the next one's really frustration and burnout, and I'm sure this is entirely not unique to me, and I've looked at other friends and colleagues and other really good project managers, and I've noticed this is an incredibly common aspect in that really good project managers just sometimes forget to stop working, and they forget to really pace themselves. I've had numerous examples of working really flat out on a project because that's what the project has demanded, and completely forgetting that you need to ensure that you're putting your well-being absolutely alongside the work that you're doing. And what, a piece of advice that a manager gave me once was actually, a project can replace you. You and your family can't replace you. So it's really important that as really good project managers, we put our well-being alongside the well-being of our projects. So life challenges. So I can't move on from this slide without reflecting on the fact that as you're going through your career, life will happen. And it was really interesting as I was mapping out my career journey, kind of recognising all of the life changes that were happening at the different stages. And it's an interesting dilemma as to how much you kind of have a game face on, so to speak, as you're undertaking your projects. And sometimes that isn't always possible. So I think, for me, there is a little bit to be said about giving yourself some leeway, because life will happen. And, your career will not always be at the forefront, and there will be other things that will challenge you, and you will need to, put as a priority going forward. So I think it's just important to recognise that it's very rarely a kind of a straight path, and that life will happen. And then finally, my kind of final real career challenge was kind of navigating people, organisations and industry changes. And this is a really interesting one, because as much as, a project management, as a project management professional, we can lean on the processes and tools that our sort of project training has provided us with. But actually, the bit that is not so readily available are those skills in navigating people, organisations, and change in general. So for me, when I look back at some of the real points that where I was really challenged within my career, it was not the delivery in the project, because actually in a very basic way, delivering the project is quite easy. It's actually delivering that project while navigating through all of those unpredictable aspects of the people you're working with, or the people you're delivering for, or the organisations and the cultures and the different parameters. Or in fact, the fact that just when you think you have things completely worked out, that suddenly you're dealing with a change. So those are the kind of I guess aligned skills that you really need to pull on throughout your career, and then actually you'll develop as you become a rounded projects manager. So what did those challenges actually teach me? So the four things that I really wanted to pull out was around resilience, perseverance, empathy, and confidence. And interestingly, none of these things you come about on day one of your career. So it's actually a real testament that actually you have to go through some of those hardships in order to really develop these really, really key, and I would almost say central skills to delivering good project management. And actually, why actually they're even more, I guess, intrinsic to this particular presentation and bringing your whole self to project management, is that actually all of these things also go to understanding your own vulnerabilities as an individual, and recognising that actually the more that you're able to delve into those sort of particular wells, you're actually really demonstrating really good project management and good project management skills. Confidence for me is one of my favourites, because actually you can't actually gain that confidence unless you've been through some of those hardships. And for me, confidence is really about having that ability to know that you'll be able to get through whatever situations are thrown up at you, because you've been in the situation before and recognise that you've been able to find your way through. And I was reading a book by Ray Dalio, and I really wanted to share one of what he has as a central theme within his book, which is actually called The Principles. And I think it really well describes a lot of what my career has looked like. And I think on the surface, what most people see is that, you've had a pretty good career trajectory. On the surface, you've been getting better, things have been going up, and you've continued to build your skills, and obviously progress, during your career. But what this diagram actually shows is actually what's happening under the surface. And when I've looked back over my career, I think I probably failed as much as I succeeded. But actually, it's those failures that actually have allowed me to make some of those step changes within my career. And so I really just wanted to leave you with just that thought that actually, sometimes when you're going through the hardest parts of your career journey, those are actually the points in time that you look back and say that made a real difference in terms of where you've actually got to. So just to round things off, and before we stop for some questions, I just really wanted to pick up on what does the future hold, both for myself and the project management industry going forward. So for me, and thinking about kind of how we bring ourselves and our experiences into what we do, I think it's really important that we ask ourselves some really key questions. So who are you? It's taken me a little while within a project management context to really understand just how important that question is to how I do my job really well. And for me, it's about creating those work experiences that will be able to validate how you see yourself and how you have answered that question. Secondly, what do you care about? It is without doubt that the best projects that I have been involved in are those that have absolutely been true to the core of myself. It's where I've been able to be the most authentic that I can be, but you aren't able to find those projects and seek out those opportunities until you really understand what it is that absolutely drives you and makes you care about what you do. But that further risk that you take to be authentic and to bring your whole self to what you're doing, has been, absolutely incredible for me, and it's something that I look forward to doing more, as my career moves forward. And then finally, what brings you happiness? I think I've been incredibly lucky to stumble on a career that I absolutely love. And I was thinking back to one particular project that I was working on, and granted, it was probably about early on in my career, but I remember telling my manager at the time, Ben, I cannot believe you're paying me for this because I absolutely love what I'm doing. So for me, it's about living your perfect day, and then just really seeking to repeat that. And I think if you're able to do that, then I think you are going a long way to making sure that you've brought your whole self to your project. And on that note, thank you for your time. I hope it's not been too much of a whistle-stop tour through my career, but if you do have any questions, I think we've probably got about half an hour or so to pick up on any discussions that you may have. I know that you had all taken part in a poll on joining the webinar, so I think we can pull up those results now, and I think we've got a couple of questions around them.
Perfect, thank you, Nicola. That was a really good presentation. I've just made the poll live now for everyone, and they're just completing it, so we'll leave that open for a moment. But thank you very much for sharing some great tips, insights, and there are some great compliments coming through on the chat along with some questions. So I'll dive straight into one of them. It's what does a typical project professional look like?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. I'm going to try and share my camera. I don't know if anyone can you see me, Bob? It's not coming out.
Yeah, we can.
Perfect. Excellent. So I can answer those questions. So this is a really great question, and for me, I think projects should reflect the people that they serve. So there is no typical look for a project manager, and I'm really glad that we've moved away from the days where, you know, you had to have a certain look. And I remember when I was, you know, first joined, the rail industry, I honestly thought that, you know, to be a manager, you know, you had to get to being over 45, you had to be male, and in most cases you also had to be white or English. So for me, I'm really glad that we've moved away from those days, and then actually good project managers are people that are really capable of doing their job. They're really competent, they're really diligent, and more than anything, they reflect the projects that they're involved with.
Excellent, thank you. I've closed the poll. About 45% of the people who's responded said it's been really challenging, with about 30% saying neutral, neither hard or easy. So we're kind of looking at about 50% of the room saying that they've experienced challenges along the way. So perhaps moving on from that theme, really, someone's asked, what's been the biggest challenge to you to date, and how did you overcome that?
Yeah, so I think for me was probably really finding my voice on a project. I think I alluded to it a little bit within the presentation. I think certainly when I started, I tended to be the youngest in the room. You know, most people would very quickly pass over you because actually you don't look like you've got a lot of experience. And I think actually that the challenging bit for me was having to kind of constantly reiterate, to colleagues or people that I knew or didn't know me, and my professional background was actually, I am a good project manager, and you can have absolute confidence in terms of the fact that I will deliver. So it was a little bit around that frustration around having to constantly, tell people that I knew how to do my job. Very frustrating.
Excellent, thank you. And you mentioned at the beginning that your mum, and it's important for you to kind of get the work-life balance, and I've made a note of the quote that you said about projects can be replaced but people can't. So how have you achieved a work-life balance?
Yeah, so really good question, and I guess it's recognising that you need to put in boundaries and parameters for yourself. I think when you're working almost to an inanimate project, if you don't put those boundaries in, then you're basically at the will of everything that's happening around you. So I think it's really important that you're really clear in terms of what your limits are and what you need to do to ensure that you are keeping well. It is easier said than done, and I know that when people are starting out in their careers, it's a lot harder to I guess put those boundaries in place. It's certainly as you gain experience, you gain seniority within projects. You know, it's much more easier to feel and have the confidence to be able to do that. But I think it is really important, and I would absolutely stress to newer project managers, people that are starting out in their careers, that it's really important that you recognise yourself as a value within that project, and you treat yourself like any other resource that's precious, and you make sure that you are also safeguarding yourself.
Excellent, that's great advice. And I'm just going to share Emma's question. She says, thank you for your talk today. It's been interesting to hear about someone else's journey. Now, I think you've kind of answered the first question there, but Emma's starting out on her project management apprenticeship in September. And I was wondering, one, what would be your single most important piece of advice for someone starting out? And two, is there anything you would do differently if you started over again in your career?
Yeah, so thanks, Emma. I would really try to get to know the different aspects of how projects work. So really just understanding kind of how projects work under the bonnet. All of those kind of skills on paper that you can learn, and quite often you'll do that by just having exposure to lots of different parts of projects. So as much as you may want to feel like you want to get comfortable doing something, I would resist that urge and just absolutely kind of just make sure you're giving yourself the opportunity to learn lots of different things. I would also pay as much attention to learning the kind of softer skills within projects, and this will come easier to some people than it will do to others. But I have never ever been in a project where it has not made the difference to kind of have some of those softer skills, whether it be really good communication, really good interpersonal behaviour, just kind of having empathy for people, or for the end users that you are trying to deliver your project for. So it's a little harder to I guess develop exactly those skills, but I would absolutely put myself in a position to where you are able to do that. And I guess answering your second question, which I think was what would I do differently, I think it would be encouraging myself just to take lots of risks, and I think and I don't mean that in the project context, because obviously you manage those, but really in terms of my own career. So just giving myself the opportunity to come out of my comfort zone. I think I was probably 4 or 5 years into my career where I realised that actually my single biggest opportunity for moving forward was just saying yes to lots of things. If I could give myself a bit of advice going back, it would be just get involved with as many things as you can. And I think the other thing is probably just just developing your network, both within your projects that you're working on and just outside. So the industry that you're in, just thinking of the ways that you can develop, your networks. Because actually, as I've gone through my career, I have, the number of times that networks that I've developed, second or third year that I was doing projects, and they're people that I've now come around to talk to or I've been involved with. So just recognising the importance of your network.
Excellent. That's a great set of advice there. Thank you. So Simone and a couple of people have mentioned about role models, but Simone in particular says, I know you're passionate and great at mentoring and coaching young people. Can you share your perspective on what makes a great mentor and your general perspective on this?
Yeah, so for me, it's remembering how difficult it was back then, and kind of recognising that actually, the same thing that I would have wanted when I started out in my career is probably absolutely what the mentees that I'm working with are looking for now. And I think it's giving people a safe space in which they can be themselves. And I know for me at the very beginning of my career, you do feel very kind of torn to conform, and actually a really good mentor kind of gives you the confidence to say actually you can be yourself, and actually that will be fine, and that's enough. To do and be that, and actually that confidence, if you can give them that in that space, then actually that's then what they need to be able to have, so that they can then utilise it out in the big wide bad world. So yeah, so for me it's giving them that space and that confidence.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So Francis has said, being from a BAME background, did you find yourself having to prove yourself more in terms of competency and experience dealing with any biases?
Yeah, so for me that was 100%. Certainly at the beginning, I made a lot of tea, and having to tell people I'm not there to make the tea was something that certainly happened a lot in the beginning of my career. So just having to re-explain, this was, you know, these are my academic qualifications, or this is the experience that I had. And what for me was very telling was once I'd worked with people for some time on projects, they would then take on the role of explaining, you know, she is really competent, and by the way, she does this. So for me, it kind of validated that it wasn't all in my head, and it is difficult to get over some of those preconceptions. And you know, what I would say for other you know, BAME individuals, for other women, for other minorities that maybe face that same challenge, the best weapon that you have is to be really, really good at what you do. And you know, I hate this feeling that, you know, you have to be exceptional in order just to, you know, get on and do your job. But for me, the fact that I knew I could always rely on the fact that I'm really, really good at what I do, and actually I challenge you to tell me that I'm not, was actually a really good confidence booster for me.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that. And I think this leads on with Adam's question about what's the best benefit to you personally about being chartered?
Yeah. So again, it's a badge that kind of tells people very quickly what you've done and your experience and your journey. So it kind of you know, you don't have to go through that bit of explanation. I think it's also really validating for yourself, because actually it's something that, you know, in a nutshell has been able to sum up my career. And you know, even in undertaking the chartership, you know, there were so many different projects that I'd forgotten, and it gave me the chance to really re-examine some of my learnings, and you know, just almost just kind of polish up on the fact that, you know, actually I know all of this. And so chartership for me has had a number of benefits. It's obviously something that will, you know, very likely to propel your career forward, but actually it's been a really nice opportunity to look back at, you know, some of the really good things that have happened over my career.
Excellent, thank you. There's definitely a lot of lovely comments coming through from people who are saying thank you for sharing. People are following up from the questions saying thank you for providing great answers. So thank you for that, Nicola. I'll move on. Have you ever had to call out bad behaviour in your career, and how did you go about doing it?
Yeah, so this is a really difficult one, and I think you get better at doing this as you get more experience. You know, there are countless times when I haven't, and you let stuff kind of go over your head a little bit. I think it becomes a little bit easier when those bad behaviours are impacting others, or it's impacting the successful delivery of your project, because you're then doing it from a much more objective point of view, and it is much more difficult, much more easy to do it from that perspective. You know, the times that I've called out bad behaviours, yeah, have been times when you can unequivocally see it happening to colleagues. So you know, yeah, I don't want to go into kind of naming any particular organisations, but you know, I have seen sexism happen, you know, racism has happened, you know, ageism has happened, you know, just bad behaviour in meetings where people have perhaps been disrespectful of other people's time, you know, things, you know, times when maybe people haven't been given the opportunity to speak, and you know that actually they have something valuable to add to the conversation or influence in the decision. So very often in calling out you know, some of that bad behaviour, it's about sometimes choosing the right time to do it. And absolutely sometimes, you know, you need to do it there and then. But actually, I think we forget that we also have, you know, the option that we can go away, think about things, or we can still come back and make those challenges down the line when we've had some time to kind of put some thought around it. And it is just as valuable to do that. And when I've done it in the past, very often people will not have recognised that they were behaving that way, and actually have been really mortified and have actually been really grateful that somebody has taken the time to actually say to them, maybe that wasn't appropriate, or maybe that was the wrong thing to do. And I think the last thing that I would just say whether or not you're able to kind of call out some of that bad behaviour, it's actually, you've got to think about whether or not you want it to continue, because actually 9 out of 10 times it will carry on unless people stand up and say it's not the way that things should be done. So, it does take confidence. It does take, coming out of your comfort zone. But I think you've really got to ask yourself that question. If you want things to change, if you want to make a difference, then you've got to be that difference sometimes.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Again, lovely comments coming through from everyone. One question: has the project profession become more diverse over the last 20 years? In what ways, if so?
Yeah, so I think it has become more diverse. The network thing, I would say had been something that maybe held it back at the very beginning from being a really diverse sector to be in. Lots of projects I had been involved when I first started. You get roles because people know you and know what you can do. And unfortunately, when people are building networks, they tend to build networks with people who look, act, do, and are very similar to them. It is changing, because I think the more diversity you have at the top and going through to all those different levels, the more those networks are built around different people. So for me, it is changing and it is becoming more diverse, but I think it's part of that is because people are willing to open up their networks. There are lots of, kind of structural, systemic things now which are helping to create greater diversity within the industry, and I wholeheartedly support that, because I think the downside with relying on networks and people doing the right thing is that it takes a while to come through. So I think a combination of, just better process and procedures and the recognition that actually projects perform better when you have diverse people working on them, coupled with the fact that you've got much more diverse people throughout that whole project level. So all of these things are helping to see real change in levels of diversity. And there is still a lot, we've still got further to go. There are still real gaps in terms of, the diversity levels that we really want to see, and that would really make a difference to, doing things really well. And so I think, we've just got to keep, moving forward and keep challenging ourselves to do things better.
Excellent, thank you. And definitely a follow-on from that. What's the one thing you would change about the business environment if you could?
I think it would be, I would make it easier for people to speak up and to feel that they can challenge and bring insights, into the business environment. I still think there is a hierarchy in terms of who can speak and when it's the right time to challenge. And I think once businesses can really get over that, and there's some really good stuff that coming out of some of the top organisations now in terms of the processes and frameworks that they've put in place to make that communication better and to get that kind of collaboration of insight. So for me, when we can move to a situation within organisations that it doesn't matter who is delivering the right solutions, but the key things that those right solutions are delivered, I think that's when we really get to a really good place.
Excellent, thank you. Your passion for project management is definitely rubbing off on everyone. I've just seen this one from Sharon and I have to share. Sharon says, I'm at the other end of the spectrum from Nicola. I'm a 50-year-old woman who is on the second year APM apprenticeship. But as Nicola, I'm thoroughly enjoying everything I'm doing. So you've got a fellow PM fan out there as well, which is great. So, moving on. So Teresa says, did you find it difficult as a woman to progress in the PM world, which is usually male dominated?
Yeah, it's a difficult one to say, you know, what particular part of you makes progression difficult. And I can honestly look back and say, you know, there were times in my career where I seemed to be, you know, shooting up the career ladder, and then there are other times that you know, things definitely slow down, and it's difficult to pinpoint whether it was being a woman, whether it was because, you know, I was, you know, having my family at that time. It's difficult to know whether it was BAME, and it was difficult to know whether maybe I was just on the wrong project. So so for me personally, I think it's very difficult to tie down. You know, I like to think that actually, you know, you've got to take as much responsibility for making sure that you find yourself those opportunities, and you're really putting yourself out there. I'm very reluctant to try and, you know, pigeonhole, you know, one particular aspect. I'm sure there are difficulties being female. One of the things, you know, that for me was particularly difficult was that I never really got into kind of the going to the pub for a drink kind of culture, and I remember feeling, you know, at the time that, you know, was that the thing that you know, stopped me from getting some of these roles on projects. So, you know, there are definitely things that hold women back. You know, but to be honest, the list is quite long, and I think actually that's how, you know, we need to think about how do we make some of those aspects fairer, because it shouldn't be that getting promotions rely on you having to go to the pub in the evening, or you know, talking in a particularly macho way, but you know, so we've just got to work out how we create that, I guess, kind of fair and level playing field for everybody. But I guess to answer the question, undoubtedly, you know, if we all look the same, we all speak the same, we all do the same things, you know, we'd all probably move at a more similar rate. But there are ways that we can get around with that, and part of that is sometimes creating your own opportunities.
Yeah, totally agree, and that's great advice. Rebecca posted early on, congratulations on an amazing career and achieving chartership. You mentioned that one of your key career challenges was transitioning from a doer to a leader. For those of us who want to progress, what would be your best tip?
Yeah. So I think part of that is just getting the experience and getting the confidence to rely on your judgment. Because actually that's all that being a really good leader is. And I think I kind of figured that out halfway kind of through my career. It was kind of actually, you know, why are we picking, you know, why do we follow particular people? Why do we put these people up as leaders? Is because actually they have ultimate confidence in what they're doing and what they're saying. So to kind of reverse that and think about what you need to do in order to get yourself in a position where you are comfortable as a leader, it's about giving yourself the experience, and giving yourself the permission to have the confidence that you can rely on that experience, and then putting yourself in a position where that's what people are going to be pulling on. You want to give yourself the best opportunity to be the best leader that you can be.
Excellent, thank you, and I hope that helps Rebecca and others out there. So we've got loads of questions coming in, and we've got about 5 minutes to go. There's one here that says, do some sectors make it more difficult for people to bring their whole self to work?
Good question. I think it most probably does. I'm just trying to think across some of the sectors that I've worked in, it has definitely been easier in some than others, and even on some projects. Very often that will have to do with the people that you're working for and the type of culture that you're working within. And again, this is a real dilemma, because you can stay in a place that isn't particularly hospitable, so that you're there and you're challenging that culture. Or alternatively, you can seek out those cultures which are going to be, much more comfortable for you, and in which case you will do better. So, there are definitely sectors that are better and will respond better to you bringing your whole self to that role. But the bit that you really need to consider actually is that things won't change until more people, become more comfortable, and we get more leaders in place who are willing to embrace and accept and encourage that with the people that they're working for and working with.
Excellent, thank you very much. Rebecca has responded to your previous answer, and she said, brilliant, thank you, Nicola. So that's great to see. Varon has said, have you ever experienced not being recognised for your efforts and contributions, and how have you dealt with it?
So this has happened, and I'm sure it's happened to lots of people, and it's happened, I guess, on the grand scheme of things. It may happen, you might be in a discussion and you might have said something early on, and then somebody says it, 3 minutes later, and then suddenly, yep, everybody loves it. So it does happen, and I guess that's part of maybe having a little bit of resilience. For me, I think sometimes you have to use a little bit of judgment, and for me, it's kind of judging when you sometimes just let those things pass, and at the next meeting you're like, okay, what do I do differently? How do I say that differently so that comment is heard? And there'll be other times when I've pulled people aside and said, actually, I was responsible for doing that. So I think you've got to take a judgment sometime. I think a little bit, there needs to be I guess some self-control, and there are lots of studies in terms of kind of how self-control can help manage successful careers. Sometimes you've got to bide your time, and for me, I think it's been useful knowing sometimes that it's the right time to do something, and sometimes it's you wait and you do it another time. Excellent. I hope that makes sense.
It certainly does. It certainly does, and it's certainly helping myself, but everyone else that's asked the questions as well. So thank you. So I think I'm going to bring it to an end with regards to the questions and say, Nicola, thank you for all your answers and all your additional information throughout the presentation, which I know has been received really well by everyone that's attended. What I'll do is I'll send you a copy of the questions so you can see them, but also the lovely comments that everyone's passed on.
Oh, brilliant. Well, thank you for everybody that's kind of taken the time out and, your important lunch hour to sit and listen. It's been a real pleasure to do, and feel free to link into me on LinkedIn. It's been brilliant to do. So thank you, Casper. Thank you, Rob.
Not a problem. Excellent. Well, thank you, Nicola, again, and thank you everyone who's attended today. As Nicola says, feel free to make a connection on LinkedIn. We're also recording this session and we'll make it live on the APM website. On the APM website, you can also find additional information about chartership, that Nicola has mentioned, but also APM membership, etc. So definitely go and have a look there. While you're there, also have a look at the events tab, because we've got a load of APM webinars coming up that you can get involved in. Some during lunchtime, some in the evening. And if there's any topics that you'd like to see in the future, just let us know. So on that note, thank you everyone, keep well, and we'll see you soon.